Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Chris Curry, a former chairman of the British Charolais Cattle Society and currently vice president of Charolais International. The good news is that he takes over as president of Charolais International in June this year. So I thought it would be useful to have a chat with him today and find out what this new role is going to entail and how exactly he got the new job.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, as you say, it's a massive honour to be currently vice president and hopefully in time to come president of the Charolais International. I got involved really with Charolais International while I was in the chair of the British Charolais Cattle Society. Part of the role there is to kind of represent your national society at the Congress and the technical conferences that are held every year. And the first Congress that I went to was in Sweden in 2018. And then subsequently in 2019, I went to a technical conference in Ireland. Thoroughly enjoyed everything that entailed, very informative, a great opportunity to share knowledge and to meet an awful lot of interesting people, from all over the world. Charolais breeders the world over are basically the same. The cattle in the different countries might be different in that they've evolved slightly differently depending on the requirements in the country, but the people are just the same. Made a lot of great friends, really enjoyed all of that and meeting people and learning from other people's experience and so on and so forth. Part of the annual get-togethers is the AGM of Charolais International, which obviously I've attended the last 3. And part of that obviously is to elect office holders. And totally out of the blue with the last AGM, which would be August last year, I was surprisingly proposed as vice president, and it was something I knew nothing about, and it was a great honor. I must have done something that people liked. I don't know, unless I was the only one that was daft enough to do it. I don't know, but it's a great honor. A little bit surreal, but I'm really looking forward to that. What it entails is obviously chairing the meetings, which are held like this, Zoom, and there will be, all being well, we're working towards hosting the Congress in 2022. So obviously the AGM will be held here in 2022 during that Congress, and it's a great honor. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, we'll come back to the next World Congress a little bit later in the conversation, Chris, but first of all, I'd like to know a little bit about your farm. You farm up in Northumberland, I believe. Tell me what your involvement is with Charolais there.
Yeah, you're right. We farm in an area known as Cokerdale, God's own country, I believe, a beautiful part of Northumberland. We're tenants. We rent about 350 acres here, where the farm lies between 500 and 600 feet above sea level. So we're probably classed as an upland farm. It's the family farm. It's where I was brought up. And yeah, we have a herd of between 35 and 40 Charolais cows. So usually about 100 head, with followers and young stock and so on. We have a commercial flock of sheep. We have about 120 acres down to cereals. And we have a little bit unusual, but we have a flock 1,500 breeding ducks, which we keep on contract for Gressingham. So that's something a little bit different. And I also, as most people will be aware, I work full-time off the farm as a funeral director. So yeah, life's never dull.
Sadly, I suppose that part of your role has kept you very busy in the last 12 months with COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a challenging 12 months for everybody, I think. Yeah, we've seen a lot of sad situations. It hasn't been easy for anybody, but yes, you're right. It's been very busy. Thankfully, it's eased up. Hopefully we're through the worst now and can kind of see some light at the end of the tunnel. But yes, it's not been a lot of fun.
Now, just talk us a little bit through the Charolais that you've got, where your breeding comes from, and how you've seen them develop over the past few years.
Okay. When I was brought up at home here, we didn't actually have a breeding herd, cattle breeding herd at all. We just used to buy in cattle and finish them. But I was always sort of fascinated and always interested in the breeding side. And when I was able and fortunate enough to start a farm on my own, I started off as suckler herd initially, and then always had a soft spot for Charolais. This part of the world, Northumberland, is a renowned sort of suckler cow area, and a lot of the sort of top men in Northumberland were pioneers of the sort of Charolais breed and started using Charolais bulls in the very early days, the late 60s, early 70s. And, I was very, very impressed with the Charolais cattle. Just traveling around here in this area and a little bit further west up the hill, a lot of people then traditionally used to have sort of blue-grey Galloway cross type cows and used to put Charolais bulls over them. And, by the back end of the summer when you were driving around and you saw these tiny cows, really, it wouldn't be any higher than your belly button, and they had these impressive Charolais calves that were just about as big as their mothers, lifting them off the ground when they were suckling. It was something to behold. And the sort of the dedicated suckle calf sales, dedicated Charolais suckle calf sales initially at Rest and then at Wooler, where you saw pens and pens and pens of these really impressive cream and golden cattle. It's just something that you never forget. So it was a no-brainer about what type of bull I wanted to use with a Charolais bull, and then sort of convinced myself that I needed to have one or two females. And so yeah, we bought a first Charolais female, I think, in 1987. She was a beast called Northfield Bridget. She was at the Christmas Cracker at Carlisle. She was carrying a second calf, having lost her first calf, so she was bought quite reasonably. She did very well for us. Her first calf was called Fiona, who subsequently went on to be the granny of Burrard and Talisman. So she did well. The other cow that did well for us was a cow called Friat Ample, who we bought at the Baggrave dispersal with a bull calf at foot, and we flushed her quite a bit to different bulls. And so basically we bought one or two others, but basically most of the herd now goes back to those two cows. So we used AI initially, and then we've had various stock bulls in between times. And yeah, so as I say, we sit at about 40 cows now.
Is embryo transfer something that you're getting quite involved in? Have you been involved in it for a long time?
Not really, no. We did, as I say, we did a fair bit initially, but that's going back 25 years now, probably. Just to get the numbers up and to kind of try and develop the best bloodlines in the herd. Since then, it's not something that we've done very much of at all. Very occasionally. With being off the farm a lot, everything kind of has to be easy. So we tend to run bulls and use natural service, very little AI now, and so yeah, we haven't used the embryo transfer very much at all in recent years.
And I know you've been very successful at selling some of your bulls over the last couple of years. What sort of traits are you looking for in your Charolais? What do you think the market's looking for at the moment?
Well, the market is certainly now looking for, if you believe, everything you hear, they're looking for smaller carcasses. So we are having to look at easier finished cattle. When I got into Charolais, it was bigger the better. Big frames, big rough cattle. You could go on and finish at huge, colossal weights. That's changed over the years, and we've certainly had to look at easier fleshing cattle, cattle that can be finished at any stage. And that to me is one of the beauties of the Charolais. You know, a Charolais will suit just about any system, and you can push a Charolais to finish it at you know, good weights at young ages. And I think that's what we need. We need softer, easier fleshed cattle that can be taken through and finished quicker than traditionally they were.
And what do you think the role of the Charolais in the dairy side of the industry is? Because I know there has been in the past some reluctance coming from dairy producers about lack of calving ease. And I believe that's something in the dim and distant past now, and something breeders have been working very hard to improve. Where are we today with calving ease?
The bottom line is that, you know, whether it's in the dairy herd or the circular herd or whatever, there isn't an animal that can perform the way that a Charolais can, you know. So then the question is, why isn't everybody using Charolais? Well, because, as you say, let's not beat about the bush. There's been a lot of bad publicity in bygone years about the calving ease of the Charolais. Most people have experience, or they've heard of people who've had difficulties with, you know, calving Charolais, and so there's that stigma that we have to overcome. I believe we've made massive progress in terms of calving ease within the breed. The cattle that you will see generally, that you will see now out and about, are very different animals to the original Charolais that came in. They're not as big and rough at the front end. They've got lighter bone. They're generally easier calved cattle. And you know, in the market research that we've done as a society, and all the surveys that we've done, calving ease is the number one priority for people, whether they're circular farmers or whether they're dairy farmers. They want an easy calving bull, and that's what is the obstacle, because people have this perception of difficult calvings. What I would say to anybody, and you know, certainly the dairy sector is somewhere that we've lost a lot of ground in over recent years, but I think it's something that we need to be looking at a lot more. And there are the bulls out there now, which we would, you know, quite confidently promote for use in the dairy herd. But it's just convincing people to try them. There's no doubt that in the marketplace, the Charolais calf out of the dairy herd still outsells any other breed, you know. But it's getting people to try them. What I would say to anybody is, you know, do your homework, have a look at the figures, have a look at the breeding, take a bit of advice if needs be, and try a Charolais bull that would be suitable for that job. There's high performing, easy calving Charolais bulls out there, which, you know, if selected properly, can stand up calving ease to, you know, any other breed.
And what other traits? What about growth rates in Charolais cattle?
I think there's an awful lot of people need to be commended on what we have achieved in the Charolais herd. I was just actually looking at some figures that were produced this week. This is actually the Irish Charolais Cattle Society, but they've been doing very much the same sort of things as we have. And some research that's just come out shows that they have, I haven't got it just to hand, but they had improved the calving ease in their cattle by significant. They obviously have used a different recording system, but it's by a significant percentage, while at the same time reducing the age to slaughter and increasing the slaughter carcass weight of cattle, and that was over the last 10 or 12 years. And in the UK, we've done very similar. The calving ease of our Charolais bulls now is significantly ahead of where it was, and yet that hasn't been at the expense of growth rate. We've not only maintained but improved the growth rate of the Charolais bull. So the Charolais bull now is a high performing, easy calving animal that will still beat any other breed out there.
And looking ahead, where do you think genomics and EBVs are going to lead us?
Well, they're going to take us, you know, let's not kid ourselves. We're facing, as an industry, we're facing very challenging times. We're still sort of coming to terms with what the fallout is of Brexit, and the withdrawal of direct payments. The economics of cattle production have never been fantastic. So any sort of enterprise now needs to stand alone. It needs to be economically viable without payments. To do that, you need to use all of the tools in the box, and genomics are a huge thing now around the world. We can understand an awful lot more about how an animal is likely to perform. There aren't the vagrancies of human error, shall I put it, in genomics. It's a measurable product. There's a long way to go in terms of being able to analyze it and to understand it fully, but it's certainly the way that we're going to go. So we can't ignore it. It's here and we need to use it. Other industries, other sectors have been, are a long way ahead of the beef industry, but genomics are going to play a big part in the future. EBVs, everybody has a view on EBVs. EBVs are here to stay. We, as a breed society, we are legally bound to implement a performance recording system, so we can't just chuck away EBVs. EBVs are a massive tool. A couple of things to say about EBVs. If you put rubbish in, you'll get rubbish out. That's the bottom line. Human nature being what it is, occasionally individuals try to gain a short-term advantage by manipulating the data that they submit. The damage that does cannot be understated, and eventually will come back to bite you. If you're only fooling yourself. If you or I go to buy a car or something and we've studied the manual and the manual tells us that the car will do 120 miles an hour and 50 miles to the gallon, and you get it home and it only does 80 miles an hour and 30 miles to the gallon, you're going to buy something different the next time. And that's the same with bulls. EBVs work, but the data that goes in there has to be accurate, so that the data coming out the other end is accurate. And I think, there's something that we can't ignore. And I think the whole point of EBVs is that you can look at the various traits. People tend to focus on one trait or another trait, but it's the whole package. And you can use EBVs to supplement any weaknesses that you might have within your particular herd, and you can make progress. There's no doubt about it. If they're used correctly, they're a massive tool. So EBVs are here to stay, genomics are here to stay, and I think once we learn how to use both of those properly, we'll see massive progress.
Great, very interesting there, Chris. Let's return to Charolais International for a minute and the World Congress. I think it's a great honor that the World Congress is being held here next year. Of course, there still may be a few questions with where we're going to be with COVID, and I don't suppose that's made the planning very easy up till now. But tell me a little bit more about what's going to happen and what you're looking forward to next year.
Well, yes, absolutely. First of all, yes, really looking forward to next year. I think particularly in the light that we haven't been able to meet up for, well, what will be probably a couple of years by then. So yes, it's a huge honor. We last had the Congress here in 2012, so it'll be 10 years. That I remember, it was a bit of a washout, with the wettest Highland show I think we've probably ever had. But however, yes, it's a huge honor, and you're right, due to COVID restrictions and lockdown and all the rest, the planning hasn't been easy. We've lost one Congress and one technical Congress already. We were meant to be Australia in 2020. We were meant to be the Czech Republic this year, both of which haven't happened, obviously. So I think by the time we get through to July 2022, everybody's going to be quite excited and more than ready to meet up. Now, as you say, that kind of depends on where we are. We're looking now 15, 14 months down the line. And obviously it isn't just then the UK situation that we need to worry about, it's the whole world situation and, you know, travel restrictions and all the rest of it. But fingers crossed, we're plowing on and hoping and praying that everything's going to be okay. So the Congress will take place. It'll be from the 7th to the 18th of July 2022. Delegates will come into Heathrow, into London, and then we make our way, sort of wind our way up the country. We hop over into Wales a little bit and then back across. The AGM will be at York, which will be the day before the Great Yorkshire Show judging. Our national show, the Charolais International Show, will be held at the Great Yorkshire Show. So that'll be kind of the focal point of the whole Congress. We then skirt up around sort of southern Scotland and then across, and the last 2 or 3 days will be in Northern Ireland. You know, we're planning ahead. We're fortunate in that all the hotels and everything are booked in principle, and we've managed to secure those without having to commit any deposits or anything at this stage. So everything at the minute is okay, and more importantly, hasn't cost us a bean as yet. So that's a bonus. You know, we're going to have to sooner or later start committing financially and all the rest of it. And it's the economic climate is difficult. You know, people are reticent with sponsorship and all the rest of it. So I know Peter is working very, very hard on all that side of things at the minute, trying to get all of that secured. So yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity for us just to let the world see British Charolais, to promote our genetics and to give everybody a warm welcome to the UK.
I mean, how many people from how many different countries normally come to these events?
It varies a lot. Somewhere between 200 and 300 people in total. And that'll be from all sorts of countries: Canada, the States, Australia, France, Sweden, Czech Republic, Hungary, Ireland, Slovakia, Mexico, you know, so all around the world, basically, wherever there are Charolais, hopefully people will come and visit us. So really interesting. I mean, I must admit, over the last couple of years when I've been to the Congress, I've made some great friends, some great acquaintances. You know, as I said earlier, people, Charolais breeders all over the world are the same. We've got so much in common, and you know, it's a great chance just to get to know people, but also to learn. A big part of it is that there'll be a couple of presentations and talks and things, and you know, things like you mentioned earlier, genomics. These are the sort of things that we can learn from one another. Everybody, all the societies and associations around the world are dealing with the same issues. So we can learn from each other and hopefully progress with things a little bit quicker by sharing knowledge.
Well, that's great, Chris. I think, you know, looking ahead, we can see some light at the end of the tunnel now. Let's hope everything goes well with our vaccination program. But of course, it's not just our vaccination program, it's everybody else's, every other country's as well. But there is something that sounds really exciting to look forward to next year. So,
and you'll be very welcome, Sarah, to join us.
Thank you. I'll look forward to it. Thank you so much for talking to me, Chris. It's been a really interesting conversation, and good luck.
Thank you.